Hey everybody, this is Ravi from True Flame Tech. In light of Microsoft's recent issues with Windows updates being forced on people, and those updates consequently causing people's computers in the mainstream to be unusable, sometimes requiring you to bring them into a computer expert like myself for repairs, and it may just happen again down the road, and there's really no way to stop it consistently. People have recommended a number of advanced fixes and hacks to stop Windows from updating. Now, sometimes these things work, and sometimes they don't, and nothing really seems to be terribly tangible or consistent. So, in light of all that, I wanted to start a introductory series to what I believe to be the best replacement for Windows at this time. And I don't really foresee it changing in the near future, because it's been a good replacement for Windows for a very long time, but even more so now than ever, and that is Linux Mint. Linux Mint is a free operating system that anyone can install on their computer with relatively minimal tinkering, and it'll completely transform your computer into something a lot more stable, something akin to a Mac, if that's something that's appealing to you, or you can make it as much of a Windows-like experience as you'd like, but stability-wise, let's just say it's a lot closer to Mac OS than it is Windows. Now, I'm not a Mac fanboy. I've been a Mac fanboy at periods of my life. I think it's stable until you start trying to tweak things at all, and then you start breaking and expanding outside of Apple's walled garden, and things just start messing up. With Linux Mint, I find that you can do a whole lot more without anything breaking, and it's just an extremely good experience. Right now, I'm on my laptop that I got for around $225. Extremely nice laptop. It retailed for around $2,000 a couple years ago, but it was given to me as a gift, and you can get it for around $225. It has perfect Linux compatibility, and it's extremely durable. It's made out of carbon fiber, and Linux is just great for these machines, and they're called ThinkPads. And if you're looking for a new laptop this year, I'd highly recommend getting just a used ThinkPad. As you notice on the left, my business name, or self-made name of sorts, is the True Flame Tech. If you were to go to truefla.me and go to the free section, there's a ThinkPad buying guide. You can also go to thinkpad.truefla.me. So thinkpad.truefla.me. And you have a great buying guide for people who are looking for laptops that are dependable, incredibly affordable, and almost all perfectly compatible with Linux in as much as is possible. And that's the one thing about Linux. If you want to get into it for real and have the least amount of issues, you kind of have to buy hardware for it that's meant for it. It has a similar structure to Mac OS, in that it runs off of this system that has all these drivers built in, and it's meant for certain hardware, and generally you can only easily install it on computers that are made for it, made by Apple. Although it is possible to make Hackintoshes and make those run Mac OS on PCs, it's not a very stable experience. It's something that you're not really going to be able to update anything without breaking. It's definitely an advanced user type thing. Linux Mint, on the other hand, is compatible with much more hardware. But when you do hear someone having issues with Linux or Linux Mint, it's almost always, oh, my hardware isn't compatible. That's usually the biggest thing. Or they have a piece of software, such as Adobe Photoshop, that isn't made for Linux, and it's either impossible or difficult to get running. That's a good example. Another popular example, but I'm going to say it, but don't jump right off this video if you're interested in switching from Windows, because I have an alternative for you. And there's alternatives for almost anything in the Linux world. But another big one is Microsoft Office. A lot of people are kind of married to that Microsoft Office suite. They didn't know anything else existed. Well, a lot of other things exist. And I would say that in about 65% of the scenarios that someone is married to the Microsoft Office suite, it's not something that you are not going to be able to do without in Linux, because the only two things in Microsoft Office that are the big ones that you can't really replace in Linux are Access and Excel. Those two things are, unfortunately, a whole world of software and experience in and of themselves. But for the other things like PowerPoint, Outlook, Word, there's many alternatives, and there's a few that stand out. So, in this series, I'm going to go over some things, and I'm going to show you what I personally use. I'm actually talking to you, as I said, on a Linux Mint machine. I recently switched myself from Windows 10 as an IT professional for over 15 years. Around 11 or 12 of those in the professional sector. Some relatively high-level work, and tutoring and training and all sorts of things. So I want to tutor and train you on Linux Mint for free on YouTube. I want to show you things. I want to get people over on something and kind of introduce more competition into this market, where Microsoft has decided that it's a good idea to fire their entire quality assurance and quality control teams around Windows and use customers as their quality control for their business customers. Believe it or not, that's literally what it is. That is what they have done. And it's a little ridiculous. And the only way to stop it, really, is to be a business customer buying Windows 10 Enterprise Edition, which is an entirely different beast. They realize they can only really have a cash grab from their business customers. They bring in the money. And I think we're about all fed up with that. So it's time to get back to an operating system that works for you, doesn't do a thing without your explicit permission, and just works for you. And I've really enjoyed it so far. I think you will too. So stick around, and we're going to learn about Linux Mint in this upcoming series. Right now, just to give you a brief foreshadowing of what's going to go on, or a teaser trailer, I'm going to go over some things right now. I'm going to show you what my own system looks like, and we'll see what you think. So what I'm going to start off with here is, you're just going to see my video recording screen briefly. I'm not going to put a lot of video editing into these videos. I just don't have time for that. That's why I'm in a car. And I have a much better setup at home. I don't have time to use it anyway. But this is my system. This is Linux Mint, but it's not as Linux Mint actually comes out of the box. Linux Mint out of the box looks a lot more user-friendly. And we're going to see that in a second. And this is what Linux Mint looks like out of the box. This is Linux Mint, and it looks really a lot like a cross between Windows XP and Windows 7. If you've used Windows XP or Windows 7 and liked them, Linux Mint out of the box is perfect for you. I mean, there's not a lot of confusing stuff going on. I'd say the biggest difference is icons are green instead of yellow, and even that is very, very easy to change. You'll find in Linux a big part of the draw, the appeal, is being able to make things what you want. So I'm just going to type themes in here, and I'm just going to change one or two little things here to make it more Windowsy, if you will. So I'm going to choose, let's say, this icon set. Makes it yellow. I'm going to choose this, just so this top bar, and there's a lot more than just these. These are just on this little demo installation I have running here. And let's choose this right here. So this is already starting to look a lot more like XP, and I just did that in a couple of seconds. And I'm gonna definitely lead you guys through that. We're gonna go through a whole theming thing for different operating systems. And I made something just by making a bunch of little tweaks like that, something that was personal to me. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm gonna get right out of that little virtual demo machine there. And I've made it this, and it looks kind of like a Mac. And again, I know I said I was not a Mac fanboy earlier, and you wouldn't believe me from my desktop, but the different ideologies that have gone into making this what it is now really is a combination of like 3 or 4 different operating systems. but with just a little tweaking, like point and click, installing different icons, installing different themes. I got from that basic Windows XP lookalike to this system right here, and this is going to show you what is on my system, what's running, all the themes, all that, which aren't important right now. It probably looks overly complicated, but that's just a common application nerds use to have bragging rights. Say, hey, look at all my themes. This is what I got. This is my paint job on my car. I'm white and nerdy. Just referencing Weird Al Yankovic there. Alrighty. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of foreshadowing regarding what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to go over some software that I use, and I hope you enjoy it. So stick around and keep an eye on the channel, subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. Bye.